back again for worst books of 2024. Like I said, I was just continuing the filming that I did yesterday for best books, so I am sitting looking exactly the same like I will all week. But I am going over worst books today. And when a book makes the worst list, I tend to have a lot of feelings about it, and I have already talked about a lot of these, so I don't think I need to go too much into depth, like what they're about or anything. I think a lot of my worst books come from like a huge disappointment that I was like looking forward to them, and they were just bad. So let's just get into it. And everybody has different reading tastes. So I'm sorry if your best book is on my worst list. That's how it goes sometimes. I have plenty of reads that I loved. I literally just talked about it on Sunday that I loved Metal Slinger, and so many people hate it, and it's going to be on their worst books, but I don't care. We like what we like, and I love everybody's different tastes. So let me know in the comments if any of my worst books were some of your favorites. Let's have a discussion. I would like to know. And if you have any worst books that I missed of like books that just made you so disappointed this year, then absolutely let me know those too, because sometimes I do like want to read them. I want to like see why they're so bad. I don't know. It's fun. I do have 2 witchcraft books to start with, and I did already talk about these earlier in the year, so I won't go too much, but that is Spells for a Magical Year. I thought that this was just a cash grab. Like there's no good information. It mixes so many different traditions. You've got all different kinds of pantheons, like Wiccan traditions, folklore, witchcraft, like so many things melding together, which like sometimes is fine. But I think in this instance, there just wasn't any background information. It was just like pulling bits and pieces from everywhere that it didn't make sense and just seemed like a let's capitalize on the witchcraft trend. And it was just like nothing about like respectful relationships and like building up a relationship with a pantheon or a god or goddess. Is just like diving into like invoking them in your witchcraft practice and with your spells and things, and just no background, no how to, just jumping into these spells that just didn't make sense because they pulled from so many different places. So that just made me mad. The other one also talked about the witching year. This one was like disappointment rather than it being like a terrible book, because I think the concept was fantastic. Somebody starting out that was not a witch, interested in witchcraft, and then was going to document an entire year of undertaking like learning and spells and seeing how the progress went for that. I think that's such a cool premise, and I would like to see somebody actually do it, because this author did not. She did, and I think there are a lot of people who do like this book, but like the conclusion that she came to bothered me, of her being like, well, I don't really know, and I don't think it really worked, and it's all mindset. Like, it is mindset, obviously. I think we all know that. But then a lot of her, like, I don't think it did anything, didn't work, is because she, like, jumped into, like, there was no foundation, and it was just, like, jumping into doing spell work, which a lot of times can be fine, because I think a lot of times the best way to learn is by doing. But then she jumps in, like let's do some demon work, and, like, or like summon a demon out of it. But like just like jumping in with like such difficult things and like things that don't really like go together, and then being surprised that it didn't work because she went into it with like such a skeptical mindset and started with something like super difficult, and then like, yeah, of course it's not going to work because you don't have any background information and didn't try to like sufficiently learn it. So I just did not like the way the author went about it, and I think I was more disappointed that that's how the book ended up. Than like whether or not it was like good writing or storytelling or anything. Just disappointed in the conclusion, because I think it could have been really cool, but I just don't like the way the author did it. So worst, hated it. Another hate, Atlas Complex. And that's the third one, and I don't know why I continued it that far. I didn't love the first one, the Atlas 6. But when I got to the end of that one, I was like, okay, wait, I think I did kind of like this, and I want to know what happens. I have since determined through Olivia Blake and other authors, dark academia is not for me. I want to understand. And a lot of the science, math, whatever it is that is in dark academia is not meant to be understood, and definitely not meant to be understood by a English focused brain. Like, I never had the math and science brain. I was always like the reading, writing brain. So it was never going to, even if it does make sense, even if it is logical, it doesn't make sense to me. And I like desperately want to understand the science that's going on, and I don't. And that's not the point of dark academia. You're not supposed to understand it. You don't need to sit there and like figure out like everything and like how it would work and try to like solve the problems that are in there. You're just supposed to read it and enjoy the academic setting. And I can't make myself do that. So dark academia is not for me. And Olivia Blake especially is not an author for me. I hated the Atlas complex. And it wasn't even about not understanding what was going on. It was just, it made me mad what happened to all of the characters in that. Just like, if you like the Atlas 6 and then you were kind of like, well, let's see what happens, like maybe read the second one. But then after that, like decide your own endings for the characters, because you are going to be massively let down by the Atlas complex. Like I hated it so much. Just thinking about it, they read this like towards the beginning of the year, just like thinking back to it, and I'm like, this is still making me really angry. So hated it. Another one that I really didn't like, and this is one of those examples where it's not the author, it's me or the particular subject, is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I love Leigh Bardugo, and Ninth House would be an exception. I think Ninth House is considered dark academia. It's a weird book, and I love it. I love Ninth House, and I love Shadow and Bone. Like Leigh Bardugo is fantastic. Like great author. Hated The Familiar. I was so bored from beginning to end, and I feel like it could have been like a cool premise, kind of hinting at like vampires and things, but it was so boring, and it should not have been boring. It was not good. I never got into it. Absolutely one of the worst books of the year, which, yeah, maybe it's me. Maybe it was her choices that she made for this particular genre and trying to like get into that as opposed to her usual fantasy books. I don't know, but I usually love Leigh Bardugo and will like be top of the list to request whatever book she comes out with, but Familiar was not it. Not good. I know I mentioned yesterday that I wasn't sure if I put Ruthless Vows on my worst books list. Turns out I did. So I think we covered that yesterday. I hate Ruthless Vows. I liked-ish Divine Rivals. I thought it was really good. I ranked it pretty high. And even though it wasn't like my typical enjoyment type of writing, type of book, genre of book, I did see like the good parts in that. And I thought it was like a really well-written story. And I loved like, the magic and the letters. I thought was really sweet. And how they were working with the gods, goddesses, going to war. All of that I thought was like a really well-written book. And Ruthless Vows just tanked. I don't know what happened there, but that was an awful sequel to the Divine Rivals. I know, and I don't think I'm the only one that felt that way. I think it's going to be on a lot of people's worst lists, which is why I don't know how it won in its category on Goodreads Choice Awards, because I thought everybody hated it. I thought everybody agreed with me on that front, that we're like, we're all hating this one, right? This one sucks. Especially compared to the first. Like the second one was such a letdown of just overwritten, not making sense, being repetitive, not like progressing the story, not showing like the good parts of like the letter writing and their romance and relationship that happened in the first book. Like you just don't get that in the second one. And it was not good. So let me know what you think of that one, especially because I am wondering who voted for it to win in its category. That one shocked me. Another one I will briefly mention, because I did talk about how much I hated it in the reviews, and that is Gilded Wicked Mirrors. And I think that was I want to say September, maybe August, but I think September, because I read it as an arc. And that was one where I was just so disappointed because the premise seems really cool. There's like all these mirrors set up all over this town. And there is an entity in each mirror, and they can grant you powers. You step into the mirror and, ask them for something that you want, but they are going to take something significant from you in return. So you might, step into a mirror and ask for some great like artistic ability or something, and they're going to take a toe in return. And there are some that are like even more significant, some that like, you can see it, like that somebody's like missing a limb or something. And then there are some where like, you don't see what their scars are, but you know that they gave up something pretty significant. So we are following one character who, it's a birthday of some sort, 21, I don't know, something like that. When on a certain birthday, everybody's sort of like a dare, everybody steps into a mirror. And so she's like trying to pick like one of the nicest ones and just like ask for something like really silly and confront them and then like turn it down. She doesn't want power. She doesn't want anything special. She doesn't want to have anything to do with these mirrors because she thinks it's crazy what people are giving up. And that is such a cool idea. I'm like, okay, yes, I will be like totally invested in this. And it starts out great with like great action. And I'm like, okay, like let's dive into this mirror world. And then just like the way that it goes, the way the story unfolds was so disappointing of how things happen and how things unfold, the characters, everything was just a letdown. That I was like, no, you have this such great premise, and then the story does not deliver on that at all. I was so upset by that one. I think there are people out there that are really going to like that one. So maybe I'm in the minority, but I just don't think it lived up to its potential. So maybe it wasn't as bad as I was thinking if I had gone into it with mediocre expectations. But I went into it with high expectations, and that was not good. And lastly is the one that I touched on Sunday's video, and that is Impractical Magic by Emily Grimoire. And this is supposed to be all like fall, witchy, Gilmore Girl vibes. And I don't think I'm alone in hating this. I feel like if other people have read it, it's going to be on a couple of worst books of the year list, because this was it was objectively bad, like bad storytelling, bad writing, like everything that like happened in it. One of my number one pet peeves, she comes back to the town and is talking with like her family, her sisters in particular, and every other sentence, every time they talk to each other, they use their first names. I don't even have siblings, and I know that you never use your sibling's name like that. I mean, my husband has two siblings. He never actually calls them by their name. He'll call them everything under the sun except their actual name. That people just don't talk to each other like that. And it's not even just about siblings. You just don't. When you're sitting there having a conversation with your friend and it's flowing back and forth, you are not sitting there saying, but Stephanie, like this happened. And then I say like, oh, well, Jennifer, this happened. Oh, Stephanie, tell me about this. Jennifer, then like, it just doesn't work that way. You don't use each other's names when you're having a conversation. You especially don't use it with your siblings. But I don't even remember what her name is in the book, but I am telling you that it appears 15 times on every single page, and that drove me insane. I'm like, okay, we are 20 pages in, and I'm very, very clear about what everybody's name is. I've already shot them out of my mind now, but at the time, I was very, very clear. I got it, okay? Calm down. So that is one of my number one pet peeves, because it's just not how people talk. And the story just fell so flat. It took absolutely forever. So she's going back to her town that has magic, and the women there are all witches. They have some sort of power. It's supposed to be this like very magical New England place that's like Halloween all the time and is hidden from the rest of the world, of course, by magic. So she leaves because she thinks her magic got out of control and was the reason that her father died. So she doesn't want to go back there. But the town is suddenly losing its magic. All kinds of bad things are happening. And so her sisters call her back because they're like, we need to fix whatever is going on, because it's probably our fault. Is it? Who knows? And she, of course, goes back and is, right back into the will they, won't they drama with her like high school boyfriend, who she laughed and was like so mad that he didn't come after her, except the whole like premise of the story is that the men cannot leave that town because the women are the witches. Anyone who visits that town and if the men leave will not remember the town. That's like the whole purpose of like it being magical and like hidden from the world, is that like nobody knows exists, because once they leave, besides the female witches, they don't remember anything. So she's like so mad that he didn't come after her. And I'm like, but he can't come after you because he's going to leave the town and not know who the hell you are. So that was annoying. And then we get to like the magical problem and like how they're going to solve it. And then we have this like very weird, is it third act? I don't even know that it's like third act. It's like, because it's like very end of the book, like weird thing that like happens to her. And then we like skip like a year and in like resolving it in like a couple of pages. It was just like the worst way to end that book and like their relationship. I was like, this whole thing is terrible from beginning to end. I don't know why I finished it. Probably because it was so short and so easy to read that I was like, I'm just going to power through. But it's horrible, like terrible, terrible story, terrible writing. Couldn't stand it. Terrible characters. Everything bad. So those are all of my worst books of the year. Like I said, there are other ones when I was like looking through everything that I read, because if you've been keeping count, it's like over 200 books now that I read this year. And looking back at my list, there were definitely ones where I was like, I should have been more definitive in my rating. Like there are ones that like should have been on, that 5-star tier and like made the best books. That's why I have the list for the 3 that ended up on the could have been here honorable mentions. And I feel like there's other ones that I gave like 2 or 2.5 stars that should have been on this worst list as well. That I was like, you know what? Next year, I'm going to be more decisive, and I'm going to have more 1 stars and more 5 stars. I don't want to have 1 stars. I would love to have a full year of 5 stars, but I don't think that's real life. And my worst list doesn't even include anything that I DNF'd. If I DNF'd it, I did not even put it on the ratings list, but those would have all been worst books as well. So that's everything. Let me know if you read any of these, if you agree with me, especially Ruthless Vows. I am very curious what people's opinions were on that one. That is everything that I have for this video, and I will see you in the next one. I have no idea what's coming tomorrow. We're going to see what I end up filming and how the rest of this day goes. I will see you then.